I guess the short way to answer this question is, should one person in the United States have the sole authority to unleash what could be the end of civilization? Do we need to think about how our chain of command works? And I think, General Kaler, you said it's fine. We want to keep it the way it is. But I just want to pose that question. That's a question that I get from my constituents is, you mean one person has this sole decision? Mr. Bracken, your thoughts? Should we be thinking about, for example, the decision to launch should be the Secretary, the President, the Speaker of the House, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, 2 out of 3, and I understand time constraints and all of those kinds of things, but the alternative is one person with this enormous responsibility.
I think in emergency conditions, it almost has to be one person making that decision. But let me go back to an earlier set of distinctions between declaratory policy, real policy, and operational policy. Stratcom works on operational policy with guidance from the declaratory policy. The real policy could be quite different, and has been historically in the Cold War. We see huge differences of what the president said in top secret instructions to the Pentagon and what they did in practice. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy threatened all-out retaliation against the Soviet Union after earlier in the week he had signed a set of doctrines which broke up into small packages the nuclear strike force. So we really need to look at both the real things really that presidents would do. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, who I've spoken to, a lot about this in his relationship with JFK and LBJ.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis, had an oral understanding with the presidents, both of them, that in the event of a massive attack on the United States, that they would do nothing for 2 or 3 days to see what would happen. We had enough forces at that time to retaliate to destroy the Soviet Union entirely. So there's a lot of interesting cases in here with this framework of what you declare, even though it might be top secret, and what a real president would do. I'm of the view that no president would ever authorize launch on warning. I don't care if you can get the head of the Air Force intelligence in here to say otherwise. I just don't believe it.
Mr. Miller, do you have any thoughts on this question?
I think the current system works. Having worked at the Pentagon in these areas for 22 years and then 4 years in the White House, every time I talked with the Secretary of Defense or the President of the United States about these issues, it was always they treated it with the most extreme gravity and understood the risks. I don't understand how you come up with a triumvirate or some panel to vote. And I think that an adversary would exploit every opportunity to try to disrupt that conferencing and thereby to prevent a U.S. second strike. And I personally, one can talk about historical recollections and reminiscences. If an enemy hit us with the first strike and said, if you come back at us because you're not shooting, you come back at us, we're going to destroy you utterly in 3 days, that's a very difficult scenario for a president. So it's not the best system in the world, but I can't think of what the best system is, Senator King.
General, do you have any thoughts on nuclear command and control?
Yes, sir. First of all, I think that there are a couple of things that are really important when we're talking about nuclear weapons. One is clarity of command. We've got to understand clearly who's in charge. And the United States has decided to put the authority in the hands of the nation's senior-most elected official. I think this absolutely has to be civilian control, no question in my mind, and it seems to me as though that's the place where this belongs, for clarity of command. And then second, we have to be able to meet the time demands of a wide variety of scenarios. It isn't just the time urgent bolt out of the blue, which I agree is the least likely of the things that we would face, but it's an entire range of things. And so I think there are two issues here for you to consider. One is the authority of the commander-in-chief, any commander-in-chief, to order the use of military force, in this case, nuclear force. That question is a question between the legislative and the executive branches. How much authority will a commander?
Remember, the Constitution bestows the power to declare war on Congress.
Absolutely. And so the question about, when does a president have to come to Congress, that's your turf. That's something that you and the executive branch have to go work out. The second question, though, is about the decision process itself. And what are the safeguards in the decision process? And so can you have assurance that there are sufficient safeguards in there that there can't be some mistake or accident or something from the sole authority here, or even some nefarious activity, all of which I think is extremely unlikely. So having said that, are there safeguards in the process that prevent that? My belief is yes, there are. Some are congressional safeguards, the 25th Amendment and other things.
Another is the legal order safeguard.
Another is the legal order safeguard at the very end. And so adding people to the decision at the top as go, no-go authorities doesn't necessarily give you the kind of safeguard you're looking for. If it's the secretary, if it's the vice president, what if it's a like-minded vice president? If it's the secretary of defense, what if it's a presidential appointee unconfirmed by the Senate? If it's somebody else, if it's the speaker of the House, somewhere along the line here, you're adding complexity.
Sure.
You're introducing confusion. You're suggesting that there would be delay or perhaps paralysis. And to me, as a commander, I would be very concerned about those kinds of problems seeping into the nuclear command and control business.
Mr. Miller? I think your microphone needs, or you need to get closer. Dr. Roberts, any thoughts on the subject of command and control?
No, I could add comments, but my thinking dovetails with what you've heard.
Thank you.